Okay, welcome back to part two of my Techno Magic Gear Chapter 10 Big Patch Update Review, da 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 da. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and let this run here and in the background while we have a conversation with one another. Um, well, we won't really be having a conversation, will we? I'll just be kind of talking at you, and you can listen, and then comment, and then I'll respond. So I want to go over a lot of I want to address a lot of the things that people have been complaining about with this content. Okay, so the biggest thing, of course, that everyone's been complaining about would just be the terrible drop rates on the gear, which my last video definitely worked to address a lot of those concerns that y'all had. So the bottom line is, I gave you in the last video the best way to manage your drop rates by farming what you see me doing right now, which is stage one. Now, as far as the second most griped thing that people have is that this is harder than soul weapons as far as getting good sets for maximum damage, etc., etc. I'm going to go ahead and disagree with that on every single level. With the way that soul weapons are currently. So if you're just now coming into this game, soul weapons are actually in a pretty good spot. They've done a decent job of closing the gap between pay to win and free to play. Okay, so at the end of the day, I would say the implementation when soul weapons were first released, I can't really speak to. But a lot of people have talked about it and drawn comparisons. And I would definitely agree that if you compared this to old soul weapons or whatever, then, you can make arguments for all of that stuff. But as far as where soul weapons are now, I would say this is definitely equivalent to what old soul weapons were before they did a lot of the updates. So it's not really a fair comparison, because if you compared this to when, like I said, soul weapons first came out, then this is definitely better. Okay, this is definitely better. You just got to give them time to address and fix a lot of the issues that people are complaining about, which they'll do. But we got to work with what we've got in the interim, okay? And again, I want to emphasize that I think that based on what everyone has said about when soul weapons first came out, Ether was RNG, which I did not know. I mean, I'm still so new to this game that it was a very brief period of time, and I didn't really even have that much Ether, where you couldn't guarantee yourself a 100% success rate on advancement, okay, which you've been able to do now for the last several months. And back when that was first introduced, I was only just starting to really whale in this game. So at the end of the day, that really took a big RNG component out of the soul weapons, and the fact that you can now guarantee your advancement by simply farming ether from Eclipse and burning stamina and all the various content, and then using that stamina and Eclipse waves and getting your ether that way, I think has removed pretty much all of the RNG out of soul weapons now, other than random soul weapon drops, which they've even done things with protection from the God King to address that. Okay, so you can expect them to refine a lot of what is going on here in TMG in the coming months. So be patient and don't lose interest in the game just because of the fact that they didn't optimize it from day one. I mean, for what it is, it's actually in a really, really good spot for a day one release. I have to say, through the years, as many games as I've played, I have seen patches and updates that were far worse than this. And Vespa listens to the community of players. They really do. I mean, they're not, they benefit when we're happy. So they're not going to completely screw us over here. Now, let that kind of as a segue into the next point, which is that this creates a massive gap between free to play and pay to win. I also don't agree. In fact, I think it closes the gap. Um, why, you may wonder, do I think that? Well, here would be my argument for it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't claim to know everything about this, but these are just my opinions. This is why I think it closes the gap. One, when it comes to gear in this game, there is no doubt that Bach gear was the king of high scores in all PvE content. Okay. Um, and you literally had to have 3 sets of gear to really play this game at its fullest. You needed to have a good set of Bach gear for all of your various DPSs in all of the various content that you would wear that in. You needed to have uh, really good Dark Legion um, gear, uh, which is the gear that gives your whole team 13% additional crit damage for all of your supports and tanks, etc. And then you needed to have your PvP gear. And even your PvP gear, you had to kind of have 2 subsets, depending on whether you did League of Honor and you did League of Victory. Okay, you had your different subsets. Um, so to farm that gear, you had to either farm 923 Dark Legion raids, which were time consuming and had low drop rates as well, just like this. Look, there's a piece of gear right there. Um, and you had to, of course, be a part of a very active guild that was doing guild raid 3 times a week, um, was doing all their guild wars and doing everything under the sun that you can possibly do to get as many tokens as humanly possible to buy Bach gear in a shop that was expensive and just as random as this. Okay? And they actually have since introduced Bach crafting selectors. It was recent, albeit, but they have introduced them. And Bach gear and PvP gear and DL gear, Dark Legion raid gear, they're not dead. The old gear is not dead by any means. So you can still use that for a while. I'm going to go ahead and say at least another 6 months, maybe even up to a year, depending on how casual you are in this game. The gears that you've been grinding out and working on for a long time now are not dead at all. Um, so that's a little bit of a side note. But at the end of the day, uh, there was a lot you had to do to get the relevant gear for maximizing your results in all of the various content here within the game. And I want to just go back to the Bach gear specifically because with the Bach gear, that required you to be a part of an active guild to maximize your Bach drop rates, okay? And it was still, like I said, incredibly random. This is beautiful, okay? This is incredible because it's one batch of content that allows you to farm it solo or as a group, which is a lot of fun, by the way, um, for different subsets of gear that has incredibly powerful stats or skills that stack amongst your teams. And you can fine tune exactly what it is that you want each of your heroes to bring to the table. It may as well just be like unique gear. Like really that's what it is. I mean, it's unique gear to a class, but at the end of the day, there is 56 individual additional skills that you can pick and choose from as you get all of your drops coming into your inventory from fast clears on stage 1 of the various Siegfried, Ascalon, and of course Golgoria. You can go through that and figure out exactly what gear makes sense for what hero. So even though it's not specific to a hero and it's on you to figure out who it would do the best on and in what content that stat, perk, whatever would work the best on, you get to customize it where you can make your heroes showcase in a whole host of variety of in a whole host of content. It's allowing you to really refine each individual hero. Like maybe you have a hero that you really, really like, but you're like, man, it really lacks this stat or this skill, or man, it would be awesome if it was capable of doing this, or if that had a lower cooldown, then I would use that hero. But for the fact that the cooldown's high, I can't use them, so or her. So, but this gear is now going to allow you to use anybody to their fullest. Okay, so how does that close the gap between pay to win and free to play? It's the fact that you don't have to be a part of an active guild, one, and two, it's the fact that you can be farming this constantly, which you could not do with Bach gear. Bach gear had very, very limited availability, right? So it was completely difficult to farm. I mean, it takes you a year or more to get a full set of Bach gear for all your various DPSs for the various content. That's not going to be the case with TMG. I'm going to go ahead and guess free-to-play players are going to actually be able to have full sets of TMG. They may not be perfect, but no one's, your Bach gear is not going to be perfect even after a year. In fact, there are guys that have been playing this now for over 3 years who don't have perfect Bach gear yet. Okay, so rest assured, 6 months from now, you will have decent TMG sets on your main roster for the majority of the content that you're doing. And you can do that without having to rely on an active guild. And that right there closes the gap quite a bit, because in order to be a part of a guild that's doing guild raids 3 times a week in hell mode, you have to be pretty well invested, or you have to be a pretty senior player in the game. And that being the case, a lot of the newer players would have just struggled to get Bach gear if they ever got it at all, right? Because you can only get Bach gear if you're in a guild, unless you buy it out of the shop. So the fact that they are now making this available to people that aren't even a part of an active guild, or maybe they're not in a guild, or they're just joining into the game, and you can get up and into this content within a month or two now with heroes like Pansy and everything like that. So a brand new player isn't going to have to get bogged down with all of the previous gear styles. They're going to be able to just farm this stuff right out of the gate, and additionally get into this content out of the gate without being a part of an active high tier guild. Okay, so that's part one in the way it closes a gap. Part two in the way that it closes the gap between pay to win and free to play is that you, as a free to play player, or a low investment player, can end up with an incredible piece of gear randomly, and that could be meta shifting for your team in all the various content that you're doing. Okay, so at the end of the day, there is a higher likelihood of a free-to-play player getting something that's going to be meta shifting for their account. That's not the case with soul weapons, for instance. Soul weapons was a very linear upgrade process, right? You had to have 1 to go to A0, you had to have 2 to go to A1, and of course 4 to go to A2. So you needed a total of 7 soul weapons, and that's not even taking into account all of the ether that you needed, which definitely favored pay-to-win players, because at the end of the day, farming an A2 soul weapon naturally through trials and getting the tier of that soul weapon up to the levels that made it, in its highest form, were going to take a free-to-play player close to a year. If they were just literally playing free-to-play with the daily stamina that's provided to them, keeping their resets in check, making sure that they were doing all their dailies, making sure that they were, and they're going to have a much harder time hitting the higher tiers of the trials for maximum soul fragment gains. So there's just a whole bunch of stuff that a free-to-play player was going to really struggle with. A free-to-play player can come and attack Algoria, not as fast as I am, of course, but they can beat him with a low investment account and start getting TMG gear right away, which is the best gear in the game. And it's already better than any of the previous gear at 0 stars. So I'm sorry, just the fact that a free to play player can come and snag a piece of this gear, slap it on their hero, and start using it right away, and that piece of gear potentially have an incredible set of lines for the hero, is giving free to play players an RNG component of luck for closing the gap. And of course, any pay to win player could get that gear that way that as well. But the differentiating factor between a pay to win and a free to play in this is how much stamina are you willing to spend. I'm not going to advise that you buy stuff out of the shop regarding TMG gear, other than maybe the one that costs us 7 million gold or whatever. But at the end of the day, think about that for a moment. You know, these people that are buying the TMG gear out of the shop are the same ones that were buying the Bach gear out of the shop. That's expensive. I don't even do that. And they're going to, you know, keep spending their money. The gap's not being closed between you and those players. There's a very small percentage of the pay to win players. Most of your pay to win players are buying stamina. That's the barrier to entry between free to play and pay to win, is when you start buying stamina. And if you're going to start spending money on this game to surge ahead, stamina is the thing to spend it on, especially now with TMG here. But then the next thing that free pay to win players start spending their money on is on soul weapon associated stuff, which is where I am at. That's where I'm at. Basically, I'll spend money on anything associated with soul weapons, anything associated with stamina. And then the third thing that pay to win players start spending their money on is all of the subscriptions. Okay. And then it just kind of goes on from there. You can figure it out on your own. And, then of course there's your players that do the artifacts, and there's your players that do the unique weapons and the unique treasures and all that kind of stuff. But, I don't really buy anything specific to unique weapons and unique treasures that often. For me, it's primarily doing anything associated with soul weapons, anything associated with stamina, and then of course the subscriptions. So to make a comparison to Leviathans, which is what I'm going to go ahead and call those people who are buying anything associated with Technomagic gear or gear in general in the shop, like artifacts and like event artifacts and boss artifacts and things like that. People that are buying that stuff, they're at another tier of pay to win. Okay, this is closing the gap between the people that are buying stamina for winning's sake. Okay, it's even somewhat closing the gap between people who are soul weapon spenders, depending on where they're at with their soul weapon spending. So it's not closing the gap with the highest tiers of the pay to win players, but it is definitely closing the gap with the lower tier pay to win players. Okay. So I want to, of course, point that out as well, is that there's definitely potentiality for you to get an incredible piece of gear, free to play or not, that's going to change your whole game. Now, let's talk about the pros associated with doing stage 1, beyond the fact that it's faster, beyond the fact that it costs less stamina, beyond the fact that you get to use multiples of the same class of hero, which, these are all really, really strong arguments for why stage 1 is the way to go. You, of course, are getting more pieces of the gear with the savings as well, which you can always grind and craft the crap you don't want and use that to reclaim, a piece that has incredible stats. So it's not like you can't reclaim it later. There's another piece. So what is that's 3 pieces now, just in the 20 minutes we've been talking. So you see what I'm saying with, with this stage 1 thing. So at the end of the day, another big pro is that you can, if you have a well invested account, Now I'm kind of more talking to the pay to win players, the whales, um, or just veterans that have been at this for a while. If you have a well invested account and your heroes have good unique weapons and unique treasures on them, you can come and dispatch Galgoria while you're going and doing PvP. Yes, you can beat Galgoria with your PvP gears on. Okay? Um, that's just convenient. That's just convenient. The fact that you can come and set up a dispatch to beat Galgoria and then go do your League of Honor with all the gears on. Okay? Um, League of Honor runs 20 ticket entries into League of Honor. Takes a good hour. Okay? Um, Sometimes even longer, depending on how, like right now, I mean, it took me to do my League of Honor runs yesterday. It took me, my God, like almost 2 hours because there was hardly anybody playing because of the new update. So, but I had a dispatch running while I was in my League of Honor gears, and I had a 100% clear rate on stage one from my team in League of Honor gears. Okay. So that's a really, really convenient way to maximize your time spent getting this new gear is the fact that you can be dispatching while in lower tier or gears that aren't even appropriate for this content at the higher levels. Reason number 4, or 5 or 7 or whatever we're on now, is you can also um, peel in and out of it really, really quickly uh, with switching the gears. So with the presets that are now available to the account, you can go and do your League of Honor while it's been dispatched doing this, and then you can go and switch the gear to your World Boss team gears, and then go and do your World Boss, and then you can switch it over to League of Victory gears and go and do your League of Victory runs. Then you can switch it over to your chapter clearing gear set for another team and go and clear 1029 and get gold, or 923 if you're still leveling heroes, which is where you'd go if you still have heroes that need to be upgraded and you have experience that you need to get. So there you have it, folks. I mean, you can literally still play the game while getting the new game-changing gear at the same time. So that's another real big pro to doing stage 1. Now I'm going to do a part 3. I'm going to stop this video. I'm going to do a part 3, and we'll talk about some more of the pros here in a moment.